Hello, welcome to the 2001 Disaster Preparedness Fair on the Air. I'm P.K. Higgins, a volunteer member of the South County Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Project, and I'll be your host for this series. These programs have been developed to inform you about the natural and man-made disasters, such as major earthquakes, that could occur in our community at any time. We will also show you some steps that you can take now to prepare your family and friends to survive a potential catastrophe. In this first program, you will hear from Morgan Hill City officials. Senior members of Morgan Hill's professional first responders will report to you about the equipment and training given their staffs so that they can provide you with emergency police, fire, and medical aid when you call 911. A senior representative of the Santa Clara chapter of the American Red Cross will discuss the emergency services that the Red Cross can provide in time of national or local disaster. Then, members of Morgan Hill's public educational community will talk about the steps that the Morgan Hill Unified School District has taken to teach our children in a safe and secure environment. 1989, do you remember the terrible Loma Prieta earthquake? This magnitude 6.9 quake destroyed homes and businesses and rattled nerves from Sonoma County in the north to Monterey County in the south. When the state compiled the effects of the quake, they were 63 deaths with 3,800 injuries requiring medical treatment, almost $6 billion in property damage in the Greater Bay Area, over 1,000 homes destroyed by fire or structural damage, with nearly 24,000 homes suffering lesser degrees of damage. 366 businesses were completely destroyed, with nearly 3,600 businesses requiring major repairs. Morgan Hill and the surrounding area did not suffer greatly in the Loma Prieta earthquake. We were fortunate, but no one can predict the future. California is known around the world as having recorded almost any sort of disaster, both natural and man-made, that can be imagined. You, your family, and your neighbors must be prepared for all possibilities. In the next segment of our program, you'll hear from representatives of the City of Morgan Hill. They will describe the preparations that the city has put in place to deal with possible disasters.
Hello, my name is Dennis Kennedy, and I have the honor to be the mayor of the City of Morgan Hill. Local, state, and the federal governments are responsible before, during, and or after disasters or when emergencies occur for the protection of life and the protection of property. To accomplish these tasks, all governments stress emergency preparedness, to include citizen self-help in preparing your houses and your homes and families to be able to take care of yourselves from 3 to 5 days following any emergency or disaster which may overwhelm our professional police or fire and medical responders by its size or scope. Mutual aid, being able to render assistance to our neighboring communities when required during times of disaster or emergencies. The City of Morgan Hill is prepared to coordinate all facilities and personnel resources available to provide the most effective and economical response to ensure the protection and recovery of the city's population in times of emergency. I give my utmost support to all educational and hands-on training programs in disaster preparedness. I urge each citizen in the City of Morgan Hill, individually and collectively, to do his or her share in any emergency effort which may be established for the benefit of the citizens of our city.
Hello, I'm Ed Tweez, City Manager of the City of Morgan Hill. On behalf of the nearly 200 employees of the city, we want to thank you for your interest in emergency preparedness. We take seriously our responsibility to provide public services on a day-to-day basis, but we also know that it's important for us as an organization to plan for emergencies. We train hard, we exercise, and we want to assure the community that we are prepared to assist you in times of emergency. We also know that we can't do it alone. So we want to assure you that we are in contact with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, in order to bring resources to our community in times of greatest need. So we want to thank you again for your interest and hope you enjoy this program on emergency preparedness.
Hi, I'm Steve Schwab, the police chief here in Morgan Hill. And we are truly blessed that most of the time Morgan Hill is a peaceful community where people can enjoy the quality of life. But from time to time, emergencies big and small do occur. And when that happens, it's the police department's responsibility to coordinate our response to those emergencies. Now, emergencies can be localized within our community, or they can be emergencies that happen throughout the entire region. And there is a process in place through our Office of Emergency Services to ensure that the amount of resources we need, either here in Morgan Hill or elsewhere in the county, are marshaled and brought together to respond to that emergency. This happens through a very systematic process where we coordinate our activities both within the police department to bring in extra resources within a half an hour to handle situations, or to request services from the county or other cities. You'll recall in the Loma Prieta earthquake, many of our police officers responded to cities as far away as Hollister and Los Gatos to help them out respond to the damage that occurred in their cities. When this happens, we put together a process through our Office of Emergency Services to make sure that those resources that are needed in our city are here. But sometimes professional resources aren't enough. As you see from emergencies that happen throughout our nation all the time, we rely on community members and volunteers to get involved, to become trained to help themselves when professional resources aren't available. And that's a key component of every community's response to emergency situations.
Hi, I'm Debbie Simon, the Emergency Services Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill. My job is to help the City of Morgan Hill be more prepared to handle any type of emergency or disaster that may happen. While we train yearly in how to handle and manage large incidents in the city staff, we also need to train in our homes and in our schools and in our businesses to learn how to deal with emergencies. There are programs available through the City of Morgan Hill to help you do that. We encourage that you and your family take advantage of any of these programs, which are presented several times throughout the year. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chief Hal Chase, Battalion Chief, Santa Clara County Fire Department. I'm here today to present to you the capabilities of the Santa Clara County Fire Department here in the city of Morgan Hill and the communities surrounding it. Morgan Hill contracts with Santa Clara County Fire Department and has done so since 1996. Currently within the city limits of Morgan Hill, there are two Santa Clara County fire stations. This one, located at Monterey Road and Old Monterey Road, called our El Toro Fire Station, which houses our Engine 12 and a truck company, ladder company, number 12, as well as a brush patrol and a reserve engine. Also in the city limits of Morgan Hill is our Dunn Hill Fire Station, which houses our county Engine 13 and a brush patrol 13. In the city limits of Morgan Hill, if you access the 911 system, your phone call is first answered at the Communications Center at Morgan Hill Police Department. Once the operator determines very quickly that your emergency is either EMS or fire related, your phone call is transferred to the Santa Clara County Communications Center. That Communications Center takes additional information from you, does what's called a cross-community event to the EMS board, and makes a paramedic fire engine dispatch and a paramedic transport ambulance dispatch, either from the station here at El Toro or the station at Dunn Hill. Some of the capabilities that we have here in South Santa Clara County is a large fire network made up not only of the two fire stations that are within Santa Clara County Fire Department, but also with the California Division of Forestry, and our mutual aid network countywide, where we can bring resources from neighboring jurisdictions throughout Santa Clara County as well as throughout the state. An example would be when we had a significant fire in the Los Gatos area, Within about 8 hours, we were able to put together 250 engine companies that came to that fire. Now, speaking of a single site disaster, something that may involve a disaster in the city of Morgan Hill but not other communities, we can draw on our mutual aid neighbors to bring in assistance from as far away as Northern California and as far away as Southern California. We draw on the mutual aid network here in South Santa Clara County essentially on a daily basis. We have an agreement with the California Division of Forestry, which has the 3rd fire station here in the city limits of Morgan Hill, south of Morgan Hill. They provide us 1 engine company through the South Santa Clara Fire Protection District. That engine company responds to all events within the city of Morgan Hill that require more than a single engine response. We have what's called an automatic aid agreement, which essentially means the closest fire engine comes to your call regardless of the jurisdiction. In South Morgan Hill, the California Division of Forestry and the South Santa Clara County Fire Protection District provide services through that automatic aid agreement for both single and multi-engine responses. We back them up with additional engines from Santa Clara County Fire. The same holds true in our agreement with South Santa Clara County Fire Protection District. When an event takes place in their jurisdiction, we send them 2 additional engines. So it's very reciprocal, and it's a sharing of resources, which is very important, especially in South Santa Clara County. You may have noticed recently that there's actually a fire service delivery study taking place within the city of Morgan Hill. That study is in its final stages and will be presented to the City of Morgan Hill City Council. There are several recommendations in that study, one of which is the addition of a 3rd fire station in the central area of Morgan Hill, as well as additional staffing on engine companies in the city of Morgan Hill. The study pointed out that the staffing levels currently are at a minimum, and that it would be beneficial to the citizens to increase that staffing level, both in existing engine companies as well as through the construction of a new fire station. We at Santa Clara County Fire in the city of Morgan Hill have an average response time to an event at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. That's from the receipt of the alarm to the time that the engine company arrives at the scene of the call. Some of the things, all of our engine companies in Santa Clara County Fire Department are called ALS, Advanced Life Support. Those engine companies carry at a minimum 1 firefighter paramedic, 1 firefighter engineer, and 1 captain. All personnel are EMTs, and additionally, we have paramedics on every engine company. Some of the equipment that's displayed here this afternoon is advanced life support equipment. What advanced life support means is we can bring the emergency room essentially to where the emergency is taking place. You may have heard of the golden hour. And the golden hour in trauma talk is that hour that is necessary from the time of the event, the time that the traumatic accident happens, until you're received at a receiving hospital or a trauma center. And so we work very hard within that golden hour to make sure that we assess the patient, have ALS intervention, and get the patient to one of the 3 receiving trauma facilities in Santa Clara County. Those 3 trauma facilities are Stanford Medical Center in Palo Alto, Valley Medical Center, the center of San Jose, Moore Park and Bascom Avenue, and San Jose Medical Center, the east side of San Jose on Santa Clara Street. What we find is that it's very hard in South Santa Clara County many times to get that patient to the trauma center within that golden hour. So we utilize here, more so than probably other areas of the county, air ambulances. There are 2 air ambulances in Santa Clara County, helicopters. One at Stanford University and one housed at St. Louis Regional Medical Center in Gilroy. Anytime that a call meets a trauma criteria, a stabbing, a gunshot wound, vehicle accident, person falls from a building, meets trauma criteria, we will normally order a helicopter, and we will fly that person in the helicopter to the trauma center. And that's part of the EMS network that goes on in Santa Clara County. But Santa Clara County Fire is not just EMS, though a majority of our calls work in the EMS field. But we are truly an all-risk agency. We'll go to anything. 911 calls and there's an emergency, the fire service is there. And we're part of that that fire delivery network here in Santa Clara County. I'm proud to be part of that network in Santa Clara County. Some of the other things that reinforce the assets of the county fire department are we not only provide all-risk emergency services, we have a full fire prevention division that works within the city of Morgan Hill, public education, and arson investigation. So it's, as we term it, an entire package. We are pleased to be the delivery agent for emergency services, for all risk services in Santa Clara County, and especially EMS and fire. And we look forward to being here the day a disaster strikes. Last year, there were 2,772 emergency requests for service, or calls, here in the city of Morgan Hill, answered by both the El Toro Fire Station and the Dunhill Fire Station. That's an average of 8 calls a day shared between the two fire stations. Our average response time is 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and that's calculated from the receipt of the alarm until the time our equipment arrives on the scene of the emergency.
The Morgan Hill Unified School District educates children in an area extending from South San Jose to the community of San Martin. To explain the district emergency program, we will hear from the Vice President of the Board of Trustees and the district superintendent. Then we will visit with the faculty, students, and staff of Burnett Elementary School. There, the students will demonstrate a duck, hold, and cover exercise. After that, a classroom evacuation drill will be held. Finally, the Assistant Superintendent for Business Matters will summarize the district's emergency programs.
I'm Jan Masuda, Vice President of the Morgan Hill Unified School District Board of Education. Also, I'm a Red Cross disaster volunteer. Our school district takes safety issues very seriously. We are proud to have the opportunity to highlight the steps we have taken in preparation for emergency situations. In the event of a natural or man-made disaster, the school district's primary responsibility is to maintain the safety of students and staff. On an ongoing basis, we ensure that each site has the resources, a plan of action, and has disaster drills. Also, in the event of a disaster, any of our schools could be used as Red Cross emergency shelters, where we could assist in providing shelter, kitchen facilities, and kitchen help. A fact which community members may not know is that California Government Code declares all public employees to be disaster service workers. Should an event occur, school district employees will be available to assist in the needs of your children. Now our Superintendent, Carolyn McKinnon, will introduce you to our district disaster plans. Also, she will set the stage for a practice drill at one of our elementary schools. Thanks for joining us.
As our board vice president has already stated, we take safety issues very seriously in the Morgan Hill Unified School District. We must be prepared to handle a variety of emergencies at our schools and have the training, the equipment, and the plans in place to ensure student safety both during and following emergency events. Our safety and response plans are outlined in 2 district documents. The first one is the Safe School Action Plan. This plan ensures consistency and uniformity throughout the district. It outlines specific strategies for maintaining a safe and orderly learning environment and establishes guidelines for emergency preparedness. The second document is a Civil Defense and Disaster Plan. This document clearly defines the roles and responsibilities of school personnel for efficient and effective response during emergency situations. As was pointed out earlier, during a declared emergency, all public employees are disaster service workers. Because of this requirement, special attention is given to the training of classroom teachers so that they will be prepared to instruct their students in emergency procedures. Our administrators have the authority to keep employees at their site to supervise and care for students following an emergency until they are picked up by their parent or guardian or by a parent-approved emergency contact. Following a crisis event, we may also need to provide counseling support to students and staff. Our Student Services Department has a crisis assistance response team plan in place to handle such a need. Because children tend to model the behavior of adults when responding to situations, it's important for the adults to stay calm and confident and convey a sense of safety. For this reason, staff training is critical. It's also important for staff to allow students to talk about their reactions and concerns following a crisis. Again, training to help staff handle these discussions is important. And lastly, spending time with staff to help them deal with their emotions is helpful so that they can better assist students. Of course, we hope that our emergency and disaster response plans are never needed, but our responsibility for student safety is taken seriously by everyone in the district, and we are prepared to fulfill that responsibility. Let's go now to Burnett Elementary School and see firsthand how staff and students at one school perform a disaster drill.
Well, good morning. My name is Bob Davis and welcome to Burnett Elementary School. Today we're going to show you an earthquake drill. And here at Burnett and at all the schools in Morgan Hill Unified, we do a variety of safety drills. These would include drills for intruder on campus and also for fire. Well, today what you're going to see are students coming out of classrooms in an organized fashion. They have practiced these drills throughout the year. And you'll also see teachers taking roll, checking to see that every student is there. Now, employees at this school and at all our schools have a lot of responsibilities related to these drills. For example, most elementary schools and all of our sites tend to be spread out. They are usually comprised of several buildings. Here at Burnett, we have what are called pod leaders, which means that one teacher within a building is designated to get their class out and then return to the building to check for any student, any adult who might need assistance, who might be missing. They then signal to me that that building is clear, and we know that the school is then safe when all of those people have reported. At this school, our reporting people include 2 lead teachers, 4 pod leaders, and our office staff. That way they can check areas that might be out of the principal's eyeshot. Being a good role model is particularly important in front of children. They need to see that we as adults are calm, are handling the drill or the real emergency, so that consistency takes place. It's important that we maintain communication. One of the ways we do that within the school is through radios. And this radio, for example, also connects us to our transportation department. That way, when we speak on the radio, we know the extent of damage in our area should perhaps an earthquake occur. In fact, having a radio was vital during the quakes that we had during the 1980s. Also, it's important to maintain communication with parents. We expect telephones to be down. We expect utilities to be down. Still, it's important to have each child's emergency card up to date. We ask parents in our newsletters frequently in this day of cell phones and mobility in the community to keep the school up to date. If a number changes, we need to know at all our schools. Should an emergency occur, we will rely on these cards for the names of people who can pick up students or for students who live together in areas that might be able to carpool home following a disaster. It's important that the parents who come onto our campus following any kind of emergency situation also try to remain calm and remember that we're taking care of, at this school for example, 500 students, not just their own child. It is essential that should a parent leave with a child that they contact our command post, which will be set up in any such event, so that we know who has left with whom and at what time. That way we can reassure parents who come to school later that their child is in good hands. School construction standards are much higher than for residential buildings. Therefore, it's important for parents to know that one of the safest places your child can be in a disaster is at school.
take immediate action now. Earthquake, earthquake, take immediate action now.
Make sure you have your heads covered up. Hold on to the desk. Outside.
Nobody said you can get the back.
I'll meet you outside. Stand in line nicely, please. Steven, get in line quickly, please. We don't have time to get back to the camp 16-7.
Give yourself a round of applause. You did a nice job.
We'd like to show you a representative sample of an emergency backpack that each of our schools have, and they keep them in the classrooms. They're highly portable. You've seen them coming out with students on the drill, and these backpacks contain a variety of emergency supplies. For example, space blankets. They're very portable. They can be used if a child is in shock or needs to be comforted. We have bandages, we have scissors, we have a complete first aid kit inside. Now, actually, these backpacks are supplemental to additional emergency supplies that our schools have, including blankets, snacks, and emergency water. So they're great to have, and we're grateful too to our home and school clubs in the community for helping to fund these items and keep them up to date.
I'm Bonnie Branco, Deputy Superintendent of Business Services for the district. The students and staff here at Burnett Elementary have done an outstanding job in demonstrating how they have prepared and practiced for a disaster. We have 15 schools here in our district, 10 elementary, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and adult education. Each school has a similar disaster response plan in place. School site principals train their staff members in disaster response skills and procedures at the beginning of each school year and execute practice drills at regular intervals. We also have contingency plans in place involving our transportation department, facilities and maintenance departments, and our district office. For example, in the event the phone lines are down, we have the capability of radio communication to each school site and department from the district office. If possible, information regarding the status of specific schools will be communicated to parents over the local radio broadcast station 1610 AM. Different safety issues may require the evacuation of students from one site to another, and our school buses would be called upon to assist. At our high school, many of the students drive themselves to and from school. Parents need to know that except for specifically defined situations, students would not be released from the regular end of the school day and could be prevented from leaving at all if school officials determined that streets and residential areas may present safety hazards. If parents cannot get home from their workplace, it may not be safe for students to be at home alone after a major disaster such as an earthquake. As you can see, there are many factors and issues for us to consider in preparation for these disasters. Many decisions need to be made at any given time depending on the situation. But one thing is certain, students will be safe at our schools with adult supervision and care until they are released to a parent or emergency contact. Thank you for taking the time to learn about safety issues in our schools. It is our hope that by knowing what steps the schools have taken for disaster preparedness, you as a parent or a community member will feel more secure in the event of an emergency, knowing that we have planned and practiced for the safety of our children.
Silicon Valley is served by a chapter of the congressionally chartered National Emergency Service Organization, the American Red Cross. With us today is a Red Cross staff officer to explain the chapter's capabilities.
Hello, I'm Dave Stone from the Emergency Services Branch of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross is involved in disaster services in many ways. Today I'll review 3 of these activities with you. Specifically, we'll look at the areas of community preparedness, working with local governments, and response following a disaster. In community preparedness, the Red Cross recognizes that the family is the first line of defense prior to a disaster and the initial care provider immediately following a disaster. Your first step should be to learn what types of disasters are most likely to take place where you live. In the South County areas, this would probably be earthquakes, floods, and wild or grass fires. The South County Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Project can elaborate more on family disaster planning. Also, the South County branch of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the American Red Cross, which is located at 7365 Monterey Street in Gilroy, offers classes and take-home information as well. For instance, we urge everyone to have on hand an emergency supply of water, food, pet supplies, flashlights, first aid supplies, prescription medications, and the like. Your initial response in knowing what and what not to do immediately after a disaster is important. You can learn to turn off the gas supply if you smell a strong odor of gas in your house. Not to run outside following an earthquake. How to treat minor cuts, bruises, and burns suffered by your family members. How to set up a communications link with other family members, and other useful ideas. Please contact your Community Red Cross representative at 842-4414 for additional information on available programs. In working with local governments, the Red Cross works very closely with such agencies as your city's emergency manager, police and fire departments, schools, and the County Department of Social Services and others. The American Red Cross is not a tax-supported government organization. It is a primary disaster response agency, whether it be a single home fire or a major earthquake affecting thousands of people. As such, this relationship must exist every day around the clock. Mutual agreements are formed and disaster plans written. Statements of understanding with school districts for use of senior high schools and middle schools as shelters are established. Disaster exercises are conducted so that everyone knows what their responsibilities will be. Red Cross disaster workers are familiar with the State of California Incident Command System, so we can better interact with police and fire personnel. The American Red Cross relies heavily on trained volunteers to carry out its mission of disaster relief, members of the community who come forth in time of community need. The Red Cross response following disaster, people will often be forced from their homes following a disaster. For instance, a house fire causing severe damage, a creek that's overflowed into several blocks of houses, an evacuation because of an approaching brush fire, or an earthquake that has made parts of the city unlivable. While the number of people forced from their homes depends on the size and scope of the disaster, everyone has a common need, a place to stay, either for a few nights or a matter of weeks. Some people may choose to stay with other family members or friends, while others may be able to find motel rooms. Many others will have no such options. One of the primary roles of the American Red Cross is that of sheltering and feeding the victims of disasters. This process starts with the pre-planning agreements with school districts and ends with the Red Cross having assisted everyone who has come to a shelter to find a more permanent place to live. Shelter life with the Red Cross, we're committed to providing temporary emergency disaster relief, which includes a safe and secure place for victims to live until they can either go back home or go to a more permanent location. We look to public senior and middle schools because they have the necessary space, usually a gymnasium, and adequate sanitation facilities and toilets and showers. We allocate 40 to 60 square feet of space per person, which is not much bigger than the Red Cross cot upon which you will sleep. You will be given blankets to use, and we make every attempt to exchange the blankets once a week. The Red Cross will also provide for non-emergency medical care and counseling. We will serve 3 meals per day and make snacks and drinks available. Because we may be housing large numbers of people, public health will be a priority. For this reason, no animals except service animals are permitted in the shelter, and anyone who requires a service animal becomes a priority for placement in a more suitable location. Your pets are very important, but it is a family's own responsibility to make arrangements for their care, such as by a non-affected friend or relative. We also ask that valuable items not be brought to the shelter, as we cannot guarantee their safety. If valuables can be locked in the trunk of a car, or better still, left with a non-affected family member or friend, your valuables will be safer than in the shelter. Since space will be limited, we ask you to only bring necessary items into the shelter dormitory. Shelters are staffed around the clock by trained Red Cross personnel. All Red Cross assistance to disaster victims is absolutely free. It is considered a gift of the American people who have donated to the American Red Cross to provide this assistance. This is the inside of a Red Cross emergency response vehicle, which is actually a mobile feeding truck. The red containers are for food, hot food, and the brown containers are for fluids. We can load the Cambros onto the truck and then drive out into an affected area and serve hot meals and drinks. We also carry on board water, juices, etc. And this is basically a mobile feeding unit. You can learn more about how to become a Red Cross volunteer by calling the South County branch at 842-4414. Thank you for watching.
Recently, Morgan Hill's Office of Emergency Services participated in a county-wide emergency communications drill. Operating the radio equipment and computer terminals were members of the South County Amateur Radio Group. Let's look in.
Region 2 up for you. Ask him to give us a call at their convenience. This is Santa Cruz, EOC, and 6HAC.
Hi, my name is Frank Farlander, and this is Wayne Roten. We're both amateur radio operators. We're here at the Morgan Hill Emergency Operations Center, which is one part of the Morgan Hill City Hall that's set up at the time an emergency takes place. Today we're actually participating in a drill. We'll turn that down. As amateur radio operators, we provide or try to help in providing backup emergency communications. Normally during an emergency there would be, in the EOC, there would be normal police and other communication, and in the event those communication services get blocked out or are overloaded, we can help. So what we've got here is a couple radios that the city has provided. We have a computer, and we're actually providing two kinds of communication. In this radio here, we actually have communication in like email. There are reports. An example of a report is this one right behind me. This is called a RIMS report. There's a formal reporting mechanism called RIMS. So this is an example of a report that we would have sent to the Santa Clara County OES. We do that by virtue of a computer program that's talking to a modem, similar to what people will use in their computers to talk to the internet, and then this radio. Today we are providing a drill communication back to the county, along with a lot of other cities. The other radio is used to connect to the command center at the county. The way we handle traffic is a formal network. There's a control person that operates that frequency, and he or she gives control to whatever station has requested the traffic. So the intent is to have as efficient as possible use of a very important resource, that communication channel. Packet has been used. This is an email type of system because there are so many reports that need to have detailed information, and it's just a more efficient way of doing it. One of the things that we can do is call upon all the volunteers in the amateur radio community in South County here. There are about 200 total amateurs, but a very few percentage of those actually are available to us. But we're hoping, of course, that there would be others as the hobby grows and as people join the hobby ranks. But the intent is, in a severe emergency, we would have shifts. We'd have hams. There would probably 1 or 2 here at the EOC. There would be some at the hospital. We actually have a radio station similar to this at the hospital. There, of course, is the same arrangement at Gilroy. And all the cities have varying degrees of amateur participation. One of the things that is part of ham radio is the emergency services. The ham radio organization of the country, the American Radio Relay League, has an organization known as the Amateur Radio Emergency Services. And it's open to anybody, whether they're a member of the club or not. And that is an important coordinating and training body. And then for each of the cities, members of that organization can act as unpaid volunteers, really, for the city and into a program that the city would maintain. Different cities have different programs. If you're interested in participating, either whether you're ham or not, I'd be glad to act as a resource for you. My number is area 408-779-9311. And if you're interested in becoming a ham, I'm also involved in the local ham club where we can give you information about where there are classes. It's now fairly easy to get an amateur radio license. You don't have to know the Morse code, and it's a pretty nice hobby. We have an active ham club that covers both the Gilroy and Morgan Hill area.
Thank you for watching 2001 Disaster Preparedness Fair on the Air. This has been a joint public service presentation of the volunteers of Morgan Hill Public Access Channel 19 and the South County Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Project, Incorporated. For more information about disaster preparedness, please watch our next program and visit the South County Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Project Incorporated website at www.garlic.com/tilde, that's the little squiggly line, SCNDPP. You may also call us at 408-776-1225. Thank you, and good night from your neighbors at SCNDPP and Morgan Hills Channel 19.